This season, Terry Rozier has been scary, and not in a good way. I mean, he wore the ghost face mask on Halloween, which is fitting because he's pretty much been a ghost ever since. I mean, in his last 5 games, he's averaging 10 points per game, but on 35% from the field and 26% from 3 on 5 attempts. Obviously, that efficiency is pretty bad, so that's leading to a lot of Heat fans casting him off and officially declaring the Terry Rozier trade as a failure. But I want to put some perspective on Terry Rozier in the season that he's having, because his first 5 games of the season actually weren't too bad. And that wasn't that long ago, right? I feel like it was just, it literally was just a couple weeks ago. We were all hyping up the TNT backcourt with him and Tyler Hero. It wasn't looking as bad as we thought. Defensively, they weren't a complete turnstile. And in those first 5 games, Terry Rozier was kind of popping off. The efficiency wasn't great, 40% overall from the field, but he was 43% from 3 on 8 attempts, which is absolutely awesome. And he was contributing 17 points per game to an offense that desperately needed it. So the moral of the story, I guess, when it comes to Terry Rozier is he is a streaky player. Was pretty good the first 5 games, has been pretty bad the next 5, and any second now, I'm sure he's going to turn it right back around. Now, does that mean that it's okay? Does that mean that his contract's worth it, or we should have given up a first-round pick? No, not exactly. I'm just not ready to cast off Terry Rozier completely, because if you ask Heat fans how they feel about Terry last year, I feel like you might get a lot of mixed answers depending on what people remember. Because he first got to the Miami Heat and it wasn't great. In his first 14 games last year since getting traded to Miami, he was only averaging 14 points per game on 39% from the field and 37% from 3 on 5 attempts. Numbers that really aren't great, particularly the overall field goal percentage. Anytime you're under 40%, that's not great. But in his following 17 games with the Heat, once he really got comfortable, he was all the way up to 19 points per game on 45% from the field and 44% from 3 on 7 attempts. Of course, he had some monster games along the way where he really carried us. There was that one game versus Dallas. There was another game versus OKC. I remember there was that game in Cleveland. I was actually there where he had the 4-point play game winner. And I think at that time, Heat fans would have said that was an awesome trade. This team needed scoring. Kyle Lowry wasn't providing that. And Terry Rozier was a guy that was really able to handle the load, particularly when you had guys like Tyler Hero out. Now, I know Tyler Hero is now back, so that's now leading to the question that we all wondered last year, which is when healthy. Stop the video right now. Go ahead and hit subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff really helps me out a lot, and I greatly appreciate it. Let's get back into it. How does that backcourt stack up? And through 10 games, I'm not ready to say definitively either way that it has worked or hasn't worked. Now, I do want to say, though, that at the time of the Terry Rozier trade, people are afraid of revisionist history for some reason. And I'm like, when you're reacting to a trade, you're allowed to talk about it in hindsight and whether you say you were right or wrong, right? Because truthfully, at the time of the Terry Rozier trade, I did like it. And now at this point, I'm not sure if I like it or not. And you might have a lot of people say, oh, you're hypocritical. You liked it back then. Yeah, that's true. People are allowed to be wrong. But what I do want to say is at the time of the Terry Rozier trade, I said I liked it if they made another move. That, of course, didn't happen. And the reason I wanted another move is because I knew at the time Terry Rozier wasn't enough to fix all the problems that the Heat had back then, which was scoring and size. They helped fix the scoring a little bit with Terry. Didn't do anything to really help the size at the time, and we saw how last season ended up ending, although they were heavily injured. Something else I always said, though, is even if the Terry Rozier experiment doesn't work out, I do believe you could trade him to recoup the first-round pick that you lost. And that seemed more certain as last season went on, and Terry did finish pretty strong before his neck injury, of course. We never got to see him in the playoffs, but when he was healthy, the second stint of his Heat tenure last season, when he was getting accustomed, he was great. We just read the numbers. But going into this season, at least as I feel right this second, 10 games in, I'm not sure if you could get that first round pick back for Terry Rozier, just because he's a roller coaster. And right now we're on the downside. And I'm sure if he has a great stretch of games, he can get his trade value right back up. But what he does have is a tradable contract, I believe, this season, because he is making $25 million, which is a lot. But the reason I think it's a relatively tradable contract is because next season is the last year of his deal in which he's making $26 million. And sometimes there's a lot of teams that will be willing to accept a big expiring contract just because that allows them to get off a ton of money heading into the following offseason. But where it stands as Terry Rozier for right this second, I haven't given up on him. It is refreshing when you watch him play basketball in comparison to the guy we traded, Kyle Lowry, who at this stage of his career wasn't really giving you much. He was supposed to be the facilitating floor general, but he wasn't doing that all that well. He was shooting the ball relatively efficiently, but wasn't taking shots. And of course, defensively, he really couldn't stay in front of anyone unless he was drawing the occasional charge, which was nice. And just from an athletic standpoint, he wasn't able to attack the basket. He wasn't able to get easy looks. He wasn't able to create that dribble penetration, which allows so much open or good looks for your shooters on the outside that we are seeing relatively consistently from the Heat this year, with guys like mainly Tyler Hero, I guess, for example, getting those driving kick looks. We weren't able to see that with Kyle Lowry last year. Terry Rozier, on the complete opposite end, has been a guy that can get into the paint at will. He's literally one of the shiftiest point guards in Heat history. I mean, if you ask me off the top of my head, I'm thinking guys like Tim Hardaway, of course, guys like even recently, if you want to put D-Wade, Goran Dragic, but Terry Rozier is just so much more shifty in a flashy sense. And not only is that fun to watch sometimes, it is effective that he's able to use his handle and change of pace to get into the paint. And obviously that's important because he's able to get himself easy looks and driving kick like we've seen him be able to do a few times, especially that lob pass, because coming into Miami, he was one of the best lob throwers when he was with Charlotte. And we have seen some of that carry over with his Heat tenure, particularly his connection with Bam Adebayo. We've seen a few times, not as much as I would have liked, but we have been able to see some of that. The problem is, though, outside of all these good things I've just mentioned, is his inefficiency, or I guess his inconsistency when it comes to efficiency, is not good. Because these last 5 games, it's not just like his three-point shots not falling. It's also when he's getting to the rim, he is not able to finish. So what good is getting these good looks if you're not able to finish? And then on the other end, his jump shot is also not falling. And one of the things that makes that frustrating as a Heat fan is you feel like the degree of difficulty of shots that he's taking is also terrible. I saw him a couple times last game versus the Pistons, which, by the way, I am recording this after the Eric Spoelstra flub versus the Pistons, so that's kind of the sample size we're talking about here. But I'm watching Terry Rozier pump fake, open catch and shoot threes, and then settling for a sidestep fadeaway with a hand in his face, heavily contested. You would really just like to see him sort of improve upon his IQ, his offensive IQ when it comes to shot selection. But these are all things that I think can be fixed. The reason I don't think I'm not super down on Terry Rozier like a lot of Heat fans is because some of the shots he's missing is him getting to the rim. He's not going to keep missing those time and time again because throughout his career, he hasn't been a terrible finisher when he gets to the rim. He's a guy that is very crafty and creative and knows how to use the angles on the backboard to finish. I just think he's in a bit of a rut right now, which he'll get out of because he's a streaky player. He's always been a streaky player. Is that frustrating at times? Yes, but when it's good, it's very good. And as a Heat team that still has trouble scoring 100, 110 points per game, I do think a guy like Terry Rozier has some value, so I don't want to completely cast him off like a lot of Heat fans have been doing. Now, there's some other things that I think could change right away that might help his game also. One goes back to Eric Spoelstra. There's been a lot of games this year where Terry Rozier is in the game late on a clutch defensive possession. Why? There's been times he's been in instead of Haywood Highsmith or Pelle Larsson, both guys that got some bigger size. Even Josh Richardson, who has, historically been a better defender than Terry Rozier. Because 3 examples come to mind just when I think about this season and Terry being on the court with regards to the last defensive possession. You had the game versus the Kings, which led to a Sabonis putback because you had Terry in the paint, who's of course too small to get a rebound. You had against the Timberwolves, in which Jaden McDaniels got a putback because Terry Rozier is too small to get a rebound. Of course, the Heat ended up winning that game. But then you had the game versus the Pistons, in which Jalen Duran got a wide open dunk in the paint because you had no sort of interior rim deterioration to sort of get Jalen Duran to make it difficult on him, right? It was a wide open lob dunk. Terry Rozier was screened out. You could blame him. You could blame Bam. Whatever. Point is, he should not have been in the game over a guy like Pelle Larsson or even Khalil Ware to provide that rim deterrence. So that's one thing that spoke and changes. Get Terry off the court in those defensive moments. Another thing that Spoelstra can do is maybe trying not starting the TNT backcourt. I know last year I was a pretty big proponent of putting Tyler off the bench just because we've seen him thrive in that 6-man role, and then getting Duncan Robinson back into the starting lineup because he's not only still an elite shooter, but he's just so much more of an improved, versatile player now that I think he doesn't handcuff this offense as much as he might have 3 or 4 years ago, because they can put him in some different sets where he's able to drive and kick or drive and hit Bam in the dunker spot. He is a more versatile player now, and defensively he's improved as well. But into this season, there's no way you can bench Tyler Hero. He's been too amazing. He's been their best player. So why not try putting Terry Rozier off the bench to sort of be that igniter to get you some buckets off the bench with a Jaime Jaquez. So you got a couple guys that could really run that bench unit offensively. You'd put Terry Rozier with some more Khalil Ware minutes. I'm sure that lob duo will also be phenomenal. And as it stands right now, things with the Miami Heat just are not working as they sit at 4-6. So I think you might as well just make some change just to try it out. And I think putting Terry on the bench could be something that might work. So alongside Tyler here in the starting unit, you could put Duncan Robinson. You could also put Haywood Highsmith when Jimmy comes back. They run Highsmith at the 4, but then they say he's too short to play the 4. So why not put him at the 2? He was a 40% three-point shooter last year from 3. He's at 37% this year. I feel like he is good enough on the catch and shoot, spacing the floor to play that 2 spot if they'd rather have more defense instead of Duncan Robinson. Or maybe you get crazy. Maybe you put Pelle Larsson. Maybe you put, I don't know who else. You could slide guys around. Obviously, Jimmy could kind of play the 2 through 3. Now, a lot of the pushback that I get with this idea of putting Terry on the bench is people will say, who's going to be the point guard? Is it going to be Tyler Hero? We've seen that before, and it hasn't worked out well, which is true, but Tyler Hero is just so much more of an improved player this time, especially with regards to his vision. And it's not like he's playing that much off ball anyways. He's still getting the ball in his hands a lot to operate out of the pick and roll, get his catch and shoot shots up. The main difference with Tyler Hero's offense, outside of the improved passing, is his shot selection. It's not like he's playing off ball, getting catch and shoots. No, he's still on the ball. He's just taking less mid-range shots and just trying to get to the rim or take those 3-pointers. So I don't think Tyler would really suffer at all if he was to sort of be the true point guard on this team, if his second guy was Duncan or Haywood or whoever. Now, as far as Terry Rozier, a lot of Heat fans might want to trade him. Is there places to send him to? Maybe. I don't really want to make this a Terry Rozier trade video because we might have to do that later in the season if things don't improve. But I wouldn't be against trading him for a piece that fits better. I know the Nets got some pieces. I like Dorian Finney-Smith. I like Cam Johnson, but that team's trying to rebuild. They want picks. They really wouldn't want a guy like Terry with a longer contract than those guys have now. But maybe you could convince a team like the Lakers to sign him. Maybe they could send us back over Gabe Vincent, who's been struggling heavily there, and they could attach a pick for us because that team like that might be desperate. They don't love D'Angelo Russell. Or maybe a team like the Magic, who still needs some more scoring from the guard position, could give us one of their picks and some salary filler for Terry Rozier. So I do think that there could be options out there to maybe move on from Terry if it doesn't work out well. But if there is no moves or the Heat decide they wanted to retain Terry Rozier, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that'll turn it around. Whatever slump he's in right now sucks, and it's unfortunate, but let's not act like just a couple weeks ago we were screaming TNT backcourt, let's go. These guys look awesome. He's a streaky player. I hope he improves, and hopefully everything with his neck is good because for all we know, maybe that's affecting him too. I don't know. I just think Terry Rozier's too skilled an offensive player to keep playing this poor. But anyways, that's really all I got to say for this video. I just wanted to share my thoughts on Terry since I feel like Heat Nation's been a little too down on him. But let me know y'all thoughts down below. Let me know where you agree, where you think I'm tripping. I'll be reading every single comment. Make sure to like and subscribe because all the support is greatly appreciated. I'll come with y'all to a post-game video to the Pacers game, which is tomorrow night on Friday. So I'll see y'all then. Peace out.
Look, pull up in your city tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.